So welcome everyone to another Monday morning musing webinar. I'm Sandra Madaffrey for those who don't know, and welcome from wherever you're watching this, whether it's on YouTube or listening to it on a podcast. One of the things that I come across quite often is people always saying, I'm busy. Have you ever asked anyone, how are you? And they say, I'm busy. So it tends to be a common thing that everyone does say, that they are busy. So I want to talk a little bit about busy versus productive, because it's really important to understand that being busy doesn't necessarily mean that you're achieving anything. And I want to go through a couple of tips, easy to implement tips and hints that you can actually turn your day around from being busy to being absolutely productive and being able to achieve what it is that you want to achieve. So let's get going. So what is busy? Busy is when you're having a lot to do, when you're feeling overwhelmed, when you're overloaded. So usually that's how you feel. There's always never seems to be enough time of the day. But the problem is that the reason why that happens is because we allow ourselves to get into a habit of busyness, and it feels good to be busy. Have you ever heard people say, if you're not busy, you're lazy and things like that? So we're programmed to constantly be doing lots of different things and, keeping ourselves going and all those sorts of things. So let's have a look at what happens here. Now, busy is usually fueled by perfectionism, fueled by the concept of working harder, and also being good at everything. Okay, we get I don't know whether it's something that society tends to impress on us, but I find that people like to say we're being busy, and they feel like if they're not running around, like headless chooks, that they get guilt, or there's shame around, not having things to do all the time. But like I said before, sometimes what actually happens is being busy puts us in such a state of flux that we actually don't get to do what we need to do. And we tend to go around in a circle. Also, the feeling of being busy, and we are, I say this all the time, we are absolutely 100%, attached or, addicted to our own chemical rushes, so to speak. So what happens is if you're so used to constantly being busy, and it's part of who you are, part of your habits of being busy, feeling busy, always busy, you actually self-sabotage yourself into getting more busy because it makes you feel better, or you're in your comfort zone. So busy, in a nutshell, is haphazardly, you're doing stuff, but the stuff isn't necessarily goal-orientated. So the stuff that it's doing stuff for stuff's sake. And sometimes, yes, we do the stuff because we are going towards a goal or something's important to us and we need to get it finished, but it's just haphazardly running around doing this, doing that, no plan, no structure. And of course, that creates that sense of being busy all the time, that overwhelm. And of course, if you're constantly running in this fight or flight, which busy tends to give us, unfortunately, what tends to happen is that not only do we always feel overwhelmed, but you will eventually be burnt out as well. And that's something that is really important to know, because that feeling of constantly being busy means that you're always in fight or flight, and eventually when you're constantly in fight or flight, your body does burn down. So really important to notice. On the contrary to that, being productive is a little bit different. Okay, so being productive means you're fueled by your purpose. Okay, so if you're being productive, you actually know why you're doing what you're doing and you're fueled to getting to that end result. It's about working smarter, and it's about being great at a few things. Okay, we're not good at everything. Our brains are not made for us to multitask, yet we constantly try and do it. Our conscious mind is not simultaneous. It cannot multitask. So we need to stop trying to do too many things at once, and we need to get ourselves into a more focused state. And what happens is that once you become a little bit more focused, you tend to become more productive and you get the most important tasks done first. I have a list sitting here in front of me, which has got my tasks for today, and I always prioritize. We're going to go through the steps of how to do this. And someone who is more productive rather than busy does the tasks that need to be done to keep the ball rolling towards their goal. So that's the other thing about being busy versus being productive. People that are busy tend to do things that don't necessarily move the ball forward. So it's really important that you take some time to really evaluate your day and really have a look at what is it that's going on. So really important is to prioritize. I can't say this enough. And, I find it really interesting to see how many business owners just jump into their business in the morning and don't actually have clear plans or priorities. What do I need to get done today? Now, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. We hear that. That's a saying that I hear all the time. You need to know, to be really productive, you need to know what you need to do during the day and how to get that done. So I'm just going to I've just realized, guys, that my camera has not been on. My apologies. I've just turned my camera on. Had a few little technical glitches this morning, but that's always good with Zoom updating. So let's have a look at how we prioritize. These are 4 simple steps that you can implement today and allow yourself to get yourself into a more productive state rather than a state of flux. One of the things that I do is I use sticky notes, and I write on my sticky notes all the things that I need to do, right? Every time I have a to-do, I put it on my sticky notes. Now, what I do is I go through these sticky notes and I have 4 piles, and all my priorities of my tasks go into these 4 piles for the day. Now, I sometimes will do this and actually put them in weekly piles as well. And why I do that is because a task that I need to do next week might not be a priority or important this week, but it needs to go at the top of the pile next week. So write all your to-do things on sticky notes. I find it one of the easiest things to do is to keep things on sticky notes written down so I know what I'm doing, getting it out of my head, okay? So once you've written all your to-do list on sticky notes, rather than a list in a book, because what happens is when you pop it in a list in a book, you can't see, unless you go through the whole list, what's the most important. So pop them on sticky notes, and you have to go through this. It should be gone through at least once a day. If you get through all your important tasks, you can go through the next pile and prioritize all the time. So the first thing you should do is all your urgent tasks with deadlines. That needs to be your biggest priority, the first thing to do. Urgent with deadlines. Put them to the top of the pile, okay? Get through these as soon as possible and plan these tasks out. So if you know that you've got an urgent task with a deadline, let's say, for instance, with me, I have something that needs to be done before Thursday. So that's actually been put in my urgent pile, but I've planned it out and I know exactly what I need to do today for that task, what I need to do tomorrow so that it will be done by Thursday. So your urgent with deadlines need to be done first. They should be done ASAP, and you need to plan for them before they become really, really urgent and your deadline is like tomorrow, okay? So you usually know tasks ahead of time that need to be done. If you don't, it's a priority. It must be done straight away. The other thing is that if we don't sort of plan how we're doing things, our unconscious mind really, really gets overwhelmed because there's so many things in our head and so many things that we need to do, and it's like keeping spinning plates. So if you tend to do it this way, you actually find that once you get into a flow of prioritizing all the time, it becomes really, really easy, and things don't become so urgent for you anymore, because usually what happens is by the time the deadline comes along, you've already done the task, okay? The next lot of things to do is important things with deadlines. So they're not urgent, they don't have to be done straight away, but they are important, okay? So again, something that might be due in a week, in 2 weeks' time, might not be urgent because it doesn't have to be done today, but it is important and it has a deadline. So what you want to do is you want to plan these tasks out. We are going to talk about the planning in a moment. After a few more slides that I'll go through, you can have a look at what it is and how I do it. But plan these tasks out well before deadline. That is the most important thing. You must plan your tasks out before the deadline. Do not leave things to the last minute. So in saying that, I'm going to actually suggest that everyone gets themselves a really good planner too. You have to have a really good planner so that you can plan your time out in that planner. And plan to do a little of this every day, each week, depending on when the deadline is, okay? So I have also a couple of other things that I need done, something that needs to be done by the end of the month for me. So I already know that's done, and I plan an hour or so a week to get to that end result of that deadline without leaving it and pushing it aside, and then, pulling out, it's the end of the month and I'm crazy frantic trying to get something done. So this is as soon as you know that you have a to-do, with or without a deadline. If there's a deadline, usually I write the deadline on the sticky note and I move them along in the list. So something that could be in the second list that's important with a deadline might not be urgent, but it will eventually become urgent if I don't get it finished before the deadline. So you're constantly evaluating those sticky notes to see what's your next priority, and it's always prioritizing what's next. The third one is something that's important with no deadline. Plan them a little each day, okay? So if you've got something important to do, it doesn't have a deadline, but it's just something that you need to get done, okay? Rather than trying to do it all in one hit, because this is where people sometimes fall apart. They wait till they have 2-3 hours in their day to be able to get to something. Okay, sometimes my important with no deadlines tends to be things that I need to do around my house and stuff like that. So, you know what, do a little bit every day and eventually, you know what, it gets done, or a little bit every week. But if something's important but doesn't have a deadline, but it's something that's important to you, you need to get it done. Make sure that you pop it somewhere in that schedule to do a little bit of it every week. And then the last one is something that's not important, okay? There are sometimes to do things that we want to do, but they're not important, right? They're not urgent. They don't need to be done. And some of these, there could be little things like, you just want to go and have a look at something, or, there's something around the home that's niggling you. Like I've got a couple of things they're not really important, but I would like to go through a couple of moving boxes that I still haven't done yet. Like I said, it's not important. But what I usually do is, because it's important, it's in the back of my mind, it's sitting there, it's not something that's urgent, it's not something that I have to do, it's something that I want to do. I have a look every week at my schedule. If I have an hour or so that's free that I can do this, then I schedule that in last. But what can happen is that the not important thing can become important without no deadlines. Then it can become important with a deadline, and then it can become urgent with a deadline. So what you want to do is you want to have these lists. You want to go through list number 1 first, which is urgent, pop that all in your planner first, then go through the second list, pop that in your planner, the third list, and then leave the last list. Sometimes you might not get to the last list straight away. It might find that it might take you a couple of weeks before you're on top of this, but that's okay. Because once you get to the urgent stuff with the deadlines, you can go through the second poll, third poll, and you might find that you've got time on your hands. And people often say to me, how do you do this? Well, I do it because I've been doing it for a long time now, because I did have burnout. And I was in constant overwhelm. And so what happened was I actually had to find a system that worked for me. So this is a combination, I'm going to show you on the next slide, a combination of 2 systems that I've used. I unfortunately can't remember the system for this one here about the sticky notes. But the next one I'm going to talk about, which is the Pomodoro system or the Pomodoro Technique, I use these combined and it's worked really well. And I just thought it's one of the things that's not important, but that I've actually scheduled time in today, which will happen not long after this recording, is that I'm actually wanting to, I haven't baked for a long time, and I really wanted to bake something today. So I'm actually going to do something that's not important, because all my urgent stuff, all my important stuff with deadlines, all my important stuff with no deadlines has all been put into place. And in actual fact, my to-do list consists of basically 2 things today. So I can do my not important things. Now, why is that? Because one of the things that will be urgent by Thursday this week, I have worked on it on the past 2 weeks. I knew that I needed to get a workbook for this weekend's webinar ready. It's ready to go. All I need to do is run my eyes over it, send it to my VA to have it put in our branding colours, and it's ready for Thursday for me to pop it into my Facebook group for my attendees. So it's very rare, unless something happens, and sometimes things do happen, that things become urgent for me these days, because I've already planned out what I need to do. I've been productive, okay, in what I need to do to be able to get to a state where things don't become urgent. So let's have a look at the Pomodoro technique. So we've got all our tasks. We now need to put them into our planner. So it's a method of staying focused and mentally refreshed or fresh. Now, it's really important. When I learned this system, I used to sit in front of my computer and do tasks for hours, and then I'd feel drained. And what happened was that when I got introduced to the Pomodoro technique, it's actually allowed me to become a lot more productive. Okay, so this is what you do. You pick one task, and of course you're going to prioritize your tasks. So you pick the most important. Now, when I say prioritize your tasks, I mean even things like social media. Why I find that people get so overwhelmed with jumping on social media is because they don't put it into their planner. They wake up in the morning and they go, oh, I've got to do my social media posts this morning, and I've got to do a live, and I've got to do this, and I've got to do that. So what happens is that they become overwhelmed because they don't prioritize to do that. Okay, so is social media urgent with deadlines? Well, yes, it can be, because social media is one of the greatest tools available to us to be able to actually market our business. So I do actually schedule time. I'm doing that right now. That's what I'm doing now, creating a piece of content which is going into my Facebook group. It's going to go on YouTube, and it's also going to be converted into a podcast. Okay, so it is important. It might not have a deadline, but it is important. So I schedule time in. Okay, so really important to think about all these things that you want to do and find time for them. So you pick a task, okay, and you set a 25-minute timer. What I do is I get my planner and I actually schedule in 30 minutes for that task. 25 minutes I work on the task. When the timer goes off, I stop, okay, and I take a 5-minute break. You will be surprised how refreshed and how much better you feel once you have that 5-minute break. And actually then when you sit down for the next 25 minutes, and sometimes I will work on the same task. It doesn't have to be a different task. It can be. That's completely up to you. But sometimes I will work on the same task. So you do this for every 4 Pomodoros. Okay, so 25 minutes, 5-minute break, 25 minutes, 5-minute break, 25 minutes, 5-minute break, 25 minutes, 5-minute break or more. So usually after the 4th one, you actually should take about a half an hour break. And that's what I do. And I will sometimes schedule a full hour or a full 2 hour of a particular task. After the 2 hours, I usually have a 30-minute break. And then I can go on to my next task. I don't normally do anything for more than the 2 hours. I'm well prepared ahead that I can actually do 1 or 2 hours only on a task, because as I said before, I've been running this system now for so long that not much becomes so urgent that I have to sit down for the whole day and do something. Okay, so let's have a look at the steps of what we need to do. Remember, we're putting everything on sticky notes, or 1 sticky note per to-do. We're putting them into the 4 piles, and then we're going through the piles with the Pomodoro technique, starting with your urgent ones, because this is the other thing. If you've got some urgent tasks and in the back of your mind, you're constantly thinking, I've got to get this done, I've got a deadline, and you're focusing on something that's not important, guess what? You're not going to focus on anything well, because at the back of your mind, you'll have that, oh my God, I've got to get that urgent task done. So remember, these are the steps before I finish. Focus on one thing at a time. Okay, one thing at a time. Our brains are not wired to multitask. We cannot multitask. That is actually scientifically proven fact. We cannot multitask. So one thing at a time. And if you tend to pick the one that's the most urgent, you'll find you'll be able to get through that without thinking about anything else. And if you have everything planned out, guess what? It's out of your head, and you'll be able to focus really well. And sometimes what I find is that when I focus on one thing at a time, my whole week's planned out, my day's planned out, because I review my day every single morning, that I actually get things done quicker than the time frame that I think so. So then I can choose to either do something that's not important, or what I usually do is go and have a cup of tea, or celebrate a little win or something like that, rather than pushing me into the next thing. I just go, oh, I've got, 20 minutes. Maybe I'll just go and take some me time, because it's important to look after yourself as well. Chunk your time. Okay, make sure that you chunk your time appropriately for the day and for the week. Now, one of the things that I do is I do have buffers. That's why I say I take 30 minutes after 4 Pomodoros. And the reason why I do that, because sometimes things do go wrong. Something might come up. So if you have buffers in between the 4 Pomodoros, the 2-hour slots, or even buffers in between the 1-hour slots of things that you do, if something happens, you have got a buffer, right, to be able to actually take care of that thing that's just come up. Use your planner. and stick to it. So incredibly important. Use your planner and stick to it. Don't get a planner and never open it and don't use it. And you don't have to buy an expensive planner. You can just go and get one from Target or Officeworks or anything at all that has a calendar in it from your newsagent, and block out your time. Okay, and make sure that you block out your breaks and make sure that you block out your me time, because it's really important. Because if you're not feeling great, if you're tired, you're not going to be productive. Okay, so use a planner and stick to it. Okay, and break your goals down into easy to manage steps. Like I said before, you don't have to do everything all at once. You can be working on a couple of different things with deadlines over a couple of different weeks. Don't leave it all to the end. Let's go back to when we were at high school. You know, we used to study for the exams, and I remember we'd go home at night and I would do an hour of maths and an hour of English and an hour of geography. This is the same. It's using your planner, breaking it down and doing it exactly the same as that, you know. Or when we would have like 10 essays all had to be written all at once, and you'd get home and you would do an hour of this essay and an hour of that essay, and eventually by the time the deadlines came around for you to hand them in, they would all be done, rather than focusing on one big one all at once and getting overwhelmed, getting tired, not being refreshed and not being able to achieve that productivity level that you want. Get rid of all distractions. So when you are actually working, shut your social media down, turn off your emails, turn off the TV, turn off your phones, right? All of those things. There's nothing worse than being right in the middle of a task and all of a sudden, bang, the emails pop up. And then what happens is you go and have a look at the email, or you get a notification on social media. Turn off all your distractions. That 5-minute break that you get in between all your Pomodoros, or the 15-minute or the half an hour break that you take, right, in between the hour blocks or the 2-hour blocks, you can go and check your emails then. The only people that I answer any phone calls that come through are my kids and my husband. Apart from that, I do not answer any phone calls. I keep all my distractions to a minimum. I turn off all my social media and I turn off all my emails. So really important. So that's it for me today for Business Secrets. You can find me on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and LinkedIn. If you have any questions, please send me an email at admin@sandramadaffery.com.au. I hope you enjoyed today's presentation and that you did get some hints and tips. I'd love to hear from you. Let me know how you went, and I look forward to seeing you again in very, very soon. For those who are on a webinar, it will be in 2 weeks, and where I will bring you other topics. If there's anything at all that you would like me to talk about when it comes to business and creating that business, and not just creating the business, but making it easy for you, please let me know by sending me that email to admin@sandramadaffery.com.au. Appreciate you being here, guys. I will see you again very, very soon. Bye for now.